Serious. What's the scariest experience you have been through, not safe for work, posted one day ago? Viewer discretion is advised. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Got hit by a car and was kinda just on the hood of the car for a bit before the guy realized he hit me and stopped. The first time I had a gallbladder attack, I legit thought I was dying. The pain is completely out of this world. It's hard to really describe. The pain is unfathomable and feels incredibly dangerous, especially when you have no idea what is happening and the panic that goes with it. I thought I was having a heart attack or worse, that my body was straight up dying. It sounds like hyperbole, but it honestly isn't. Worst experience of my entire life. My boss dropped dead on the dance floor at the company Christmas party. Edit. Wow, this blew up. To those asking how he died, I think he was a diabetic and had a few too many that night, led to a heart attack somehow. This was 20 years ago, so don't remember all the details. He was a good guy, in his 50s, divorced, loved high-quality vodka. I was a bartender, and he was the restaurant manager. It was definitely a bummer. He was a good buffer between the employees and the coke addict that owned the restaurant. I once got stuck on a rock when I was scuba diving, and I passed out, but my dad saved me. When I woke up, I was so nervous, I threw up the entire contents of my stomach and the water I kept drinking to deter the vomit taste just because I was super nauseous and nervous. I survived being struck by a pickup truck that was traveling about 50 miles per hour. Lots of broken bones, internal damage to muscle and organs including my heart and brain, and lots of pain. Finding my dad dead after he killed himself. His room had never been so quiet and still. I stepped in and saw him face down, blue, with his urine all over the floor where he'd peed himself after he passed. I was in complete shock, and I'll never forget touching him to try to wake him up and the feeling of recognition finally setting in. Even though I'd known as soon as I stepped in the room that he was dead, my mind refused to let me accept it was true until I felt him and tried to shake him awake. Feeling his stillness was the most terrifying moment of my life, and I don't remember much after that. It clicks in your head that this person is gone, they are never coming back, and then the guilt and pain come rushing in. The days leading up to a suicide were filled with fear and anxiety, because I knew deep down that it was coming one day, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. That feeling of hopelessness is hard to put into words. When I was 10 years old, I was abducted while my family and I were camping at a state lake. My parents had to run some errands, so all of us kids were left with one of our aunts. I went to a creek next to where our camper was to go fishing, probably about 75 yards or so. I had forgotten my bait and didn't want to go back for it. Unlucky for me, a man was there, so I asked him for some worms. Said they were in his car just around the corner. He guided me there, and that's when it happened. I was gagged and taken to a different part of the state grounds. What happened next, as one could imagine, are the things my nightmares were made of for countless years to come. I'm 33 now, and still recall with vivid details the things that were done. Thankfully, I was found within 2 hours of my abduction. Unlucky for him, it was my father who found us first. The man somehow managed to escape my father's wrath and flee. He was apprehended by state troopers and local PD about 30 minutes later. Cue all the legal shenanigans and sentencing. Dude was a repeat offender and still only received like 12 years in prison. My family kept tabs on him when he was in custody and were notified of his release. The second scariest thing was the day he was released. My heart dropped. He's long been a fragment of past, and I learned to not live in fear over that any longer. I appreciate any and all of you that may read this, or if you need someone to talk to, then my DMs are always open. Despite having no history of epilepsy or related issues, I had a series of seizures at work back in 2018. It started with the simple walk into a room and forget why at the time, except I completely forgot the few seconds it took me to walk there. Then it escalated, and I could feel something coming on. I didn't have convulsions, but my body couldn't respond to anything. I was just stuck, staring straight ahead, unable to speak or move. I didn't know what was wrong with me. EEG and vitamin deficiency tests all came back okay in the hospital, so it was written off as stress. I'm constantly worried about it happening again due to the nature of my work. Me, 7 at the time, my cousin, 4 at the time, and my dad went to the beach, and my cousin tripped and hurt herself pretty badly, so my dad had to run back to the house with her to access the first aid kit. I didn't want to run, so I walked home. It was only about a 5-minute walk anyway. On the way home, I passed this man's house, who I want to say was 40-ish, and he started catcalling me. I didn't really know what that was, so I just stared at him and kept walking. He didn't like that. I didn't respond, I guess, and he started chasing me. My grandpa saw and started yelling at the man, and the guy ran off. If I wasn't in eye view of the house, who knows what would have happened to me. A girl I knew passed out in front of me on the beach after becoming yellow and saw it after she passed out with a bloody hand. Screamed help in 5 different languages. So many people were close, 20 to 30 people closer than 50 meters to me, and yet no one came. They did not even turn around to check what was happening. I still have nightmares to this day. School shooting. I was a junior in high school, and a recent transfer student who got expelled at another school started shooting in the commons. Everyone hangs out in the commons before school, so it was super crowded and dangerous. I remember hearing the first shot and thought a table collapsed. No one even batted an eye. My orchestra teacher came out of his office and was immediately suspicious and said, "You guys, what was that?" Then a few seconds later, the second bang. We knew then what was happening. I happened to be in the orchestra room right next to the commons, and we had an exit that led to the parking lot. But in school, they teach you whenever there's an emergency to hide in a corner. I remember trying to hide in a practice room, but it was locked. Then my friends and I ducked under a piano, and students started swarming in the room from the commons. At that point, our orchestra teacher said, "Go," and had us run out the exit instead. It was a brave decision he made, and running to our cars was the longest run of my life. I remember ducking as I ran because I thought there might be other shooters aiming for us runners. As I ran, I realized I didn't even have my car keys or phone and didn't know where to go. Luckily, we made it back to the parking lot and met up with a few friends and crammed 6 of us in a 4-seater. I'll never forget the faces of my peers around me, scarred with fear, and I'll never forget legitimately thinking I might die that day. After aimlessly driving and making phone calls to our parents with one phone, we were able to watch the news and saw that there was no one injured. It turns out our government teacher bravely tackled the shooter to the ground. He was known throughout the state and even threw a pitch for the Mariners game. I'm very grateful it didn't end how most shootings do. It was short-lived, but I thought my toddler was with his father. His father thought he was with me. I was in a room feeding the baby. We were at a relative's property, a property with a murky water dam on it. Never felt so much deep dread in my entire life. Turned out, he had spotted a small horse in the meadow, and that's where I found him, near a fence, watching the horse. I was in Africa, and every evening a big male lion would walk through the camp. He would roar outside my tent, and it was blood-curdling. I could even smell him, he was so close. Nothing separated me from him but a thin layer of canvas. He would hang around for 45 minutes to an hour at a time. You cannot imagine the horror of that sound. My wife and I were eating dinner one night when a guy walked into our house. He told us he was the angel of death and was collecting souls for the apocalypse. Said there were demons outside everywhere. I thought, this is it, we're dead. Luckily, he didn't have a weapon and didn't attack us. I talked him into walking outside with me so I could help him out, and as soon as he stepped through the door, I slammed it shut, locked it, grabbed my gun and called the cops. By the time he was in the road screaming nonsense, turned out to be on meth. The whole thing didn't last too long, but being told the angel of death is in my house to collect souls almost paralyzed me with fear. Was riding my motorcycle and a car just drove straight into me, stolen. Right before we collided, probably combined 70 miles per hour. My actual words were, "I'm dead." Then I got flung into the air, knocked right out of my shoes, and knocked out before I hit the floor on the opposite side of the middle of the road. I woke up badly injured to drag myself away from the middle of the road right as a random car drove by and almost run right over my body. Scary shit. Now off to bed to fight the nightmares. When I was 14, 4 boys attacked me in the woods near my house. They tied me to a tree and took turns beating me for half an hour. I thought they would kill me. When I was 14, I had gone camping with the Boy Scouts and we met another troop and decided to play a game of capture the flag. Since it was the night before we were leaving and the other troop showed up at 9 p.m., our scoutmaster said we couldn't play. About 15 minutes later, we were heading to the bathroom in pairs and we run into a group of them. My bathroom buddy ducks out as one of the guys from the other troop puts an arm around my neck and drags me out into the field. I kept trying to explain that we weren't playing and that there was a misunderstanding, and then the punches started flying. I had been training in martial arts since I was 8, and it's nothing like the fucking movies. I was trying to throw off a blow from one guy while 5 others were throwing punches and kicks at me. I may have landed 2 or 3 hits to 1 or 2 faces before I was knocked down, and then all I could do was curl into a ball as they all kicked me. After what felt like a lifetime, but was more than likely only a few seconds of getting kicked, they ran off. One dipshit chose to run back and kick me one last time, and I bear hugged his leg as he made contact, and I'm pretty sure I punched him in the crotch as hard as I could. I felt something give. I pray it was a testicle, and I got clocked in the head as I heard weird groan. I can't be sure that wasn't me though. After a few minutes, I was able to collect myself enough to get up and make it back to my group where I detailed what happened. As we're getting worked up about this, the other troop shows up and starts asking what's wrong. I recognize a few faces and point them out, and one dude was limping hard, so I pointed him out too. They all denied it though, so nothing came of it. Sunday morning after breakfast before we were leaving, we sat in a circle and had to say what we were thankful for. I got in trouble for saying I was thankful for being alive. I never went to another Boy Scout beating after that. Lived in a second-story apartment for a few years. Was woken up around 2 a.m. one morning to slamming on my door and someone yelling, "Fire!" When I opened the door, everything was bright orange and I could hear the very loud crackling of burning wood. Thought it was either my apartment or the apartment under mine that was on fire, and my first reaction was to find my cat and get her out. Halfway through grabbing her, I realized I may have been putting myself in serious danger and thought I'd have to escape off the balcony. Thankfully, for me, it was the apartment across from mine that was on fire, so I was able to get downstairs and to safety with my cat. The next hour or so was a completely different kind of scary. As I crossed my fingers, the fire wouldn't spread to my apartment. It didn't, but 2 buildings were destroyed, 14 residents were displaced, 2 cats lost their lives, and a firefighter was hospitalized. A random man came up to me late one evening when I was putting groceries in my truck. He was sitting on a bike but asking me for a ride. I told him no, but he continued to insist. I went to put the cart away, and he put his bike into the bed of my truck and climbed into the passenger seat. I had no phone, no one was out, and I froze. I made the poor choice to give him a ride. I was goddamn terrified, and I don't think I blinked the entire time as the man said things like, "Your husband is a lucky guy," or, "Wow, your lips look nice." Fortunately, my lack of response seemed to deter him, and we were finally parting ways. Don't be me. Make a scene. Fuck politeness. Anything to get this person away from you. My grandma died from Alzheimer's, and I have a fear my mother will have it one day. I was house sitting for my parents, and when they got back from their vacation, my mom was sitting on the couch and fell asleep at like 2 a.m. I gently woke her up and asked if she would like to go to bed or if she wanted to just sleep there, and she was so out of it. Like, "Where am I? Where is my room again?" Then stumbled off to fall asleep in bed. That moment was terrifying for me. She is 100% mentally okay, and don't know if she will ever get Alzheimer's, but seeing a level of mental sluggishness that reminded me of my grandmother was terrifying. The only other thing I can think of was the acceptance that I needed help, and there was going to be a very long road ahead of me that was likely going to be horrible. I had a few suicide attempts and ECT. Attempting suicide wasn't really scary. Accepting that I didn't want to die and needed help was. Finding my brother hanging. The fear and surreal feeling is just indescribable. In a panic, I cut him down and he was just dead weight, dropped to the floor. Started CPR and accidentally broke one of his ribs. He was rushed to the hospital and on life support for 8 days before he passed. He was 16. Those 8 days felt like an ongoing nightmare. The night it happened, he came to me and told me he was depressed. My last words were me telling him I didn't know how to help him. This was 20 years ago, and I vowed to never tell another soul I didn't know how to help them. I have a bachelor's in psychology because of him. He fueled a passion in me like no one else has. We were very close, so his death hit me hard. I miss him and think about him often. He would be 36 this October 1st. Please reach out to someone if you're feeling like ending your life. If you don't find help, keep reaching out until you do. I was dating this guy for about 2 months. It was just another Friday night. I ordered a pizza and went in his bedroom to watch TV while I waited for it. He was on his laptop in the dining area. He started acting odd. He kept saying that he wanted to cage fight my ex-husband, whom he'd never met. I remember getting and paying for the pizza. Then he asks me, "What did you do that for?" I had no idea what he was talking about. He proceeds to attack me. He pins me to the ground and is choking me. Well, I was sure he was going to kill me. I managed to reach up and between his legs and grab and twist his balls as hard as I could. He rolled me over and bit my shoulder, then let me go. I still have the scar. I ran to his bedroom looking for my phone. I was in a panic and didn't realize I could call 911 with his phone. Found my phone yet. This was back before most phones had screen locks. I made the mistake of telling him I was calling 911 but hadn't found my phone yet. He struggled with me, then stopped and went into his closet. I managed to find my phone at this point, but didn't get the chance to call. He came out with a gun, my ex-husband's gun that he had stolen from my house. He struggled with me on his bed. I thought for sure I was dead. He abruptly gets up again and stands at the foot of the bed. 1 second, he's standing there. The next, he's gone. Apparently, I totally blacked out the part where he shot himself in the head. I finally managed to call 911, but I didn't know his address. The cops finally showed up, but he was dead by then. He was a bodybuilder. Turns out he bought illegal steroids off the internet. The presumption was he either took too many or had a bad reaction that caused him to flip out. I hadn't thought about that whole incident for a long time. This happened 14 years ago, and retelling it has had an effect I didn't know was still there.